This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Okay, so interesting day in the draft. We're going to start by talking about pick 74 here for the Cleveland Browns. I don't mind the pick in retrospect, but my reaction to this pick was not positive in real time because so many guys who I liked a lot that I didn't expect to be available at 42, let alone, 74. Were available, right? Trenton Simpson is a linebacker prospect I like. I know his long speed isn't what people want it to be, but I think he has short area quickness, length, and explosion. Double A, the edge out of Northwestern, really like him a lot. Who knows, the Browns could swing back at 112 and get him. That would be great. Really like his motor, explosiveness, hands, and step and burst ability there. But there were multiple guys available at that point that I was like excited for them to be on the board, and the Browns did not go in that direction. That being said, Cedric Tillman is not a bad pick. Really productive his junior year, wasn't the most productive his senior year, but what he does bring is something that this draft class doesn't have a lot of, and the Browns, quite frankly, don't have a lot of. He's a big body. And when you watch him play, and I've watched a couple of cut-ups of his games since he's been drafted, when you watch him play, he plays physical. That's the number one thing I look for big wide receivers. Do they play physical? Sometimes you get guys who are big, like Quentin. The kid out of TCU is a big example of this. He's big, but you don't see big out of him when he plays. Or there are guys who are smaller but play big, right? Tyreek Hill is a good example of somebody small who can play big. Zay Flowers, the kid that just went to Baltimore, is another example of somebody who's small but plays bigger than they are. Those are guys that you like. And even somebody like Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's bigger than what he plays like, because Donovan Peoples-Jones, while he'll go up there and get a sideline ball, he's not necessarily box you out guy. Cedric Tillman is 100% box you out guy. He plays physical. He almost looks like a running back sometimes once he gets the ball in his hands. He is a big physical wide receiver. The ideal that I see for the Cleveland Browns with him is a red zone threat. I think he's somebody who can get up there, almost a 40-inch vertical, again at 6'3", 215. And I was surprised that he was only 214 pounds or whatever he was at. He was around that 210 to 215 range. I thought he would clock in at about 225 because he plays bigger. There's room for him to get bigger. I think there's also a lot of room for him to be better than what he got drafted at, because he might have taken some steps from his junior year that we weren't able to see because he hurt his ankle against Akron. I like the pick. I think this pick's going to be decent. Now, where does he fit in the larger conversation of wide receivers for the Cleveland Browns? Well, that's an interesting one, right? Because this wide receiving core, which was pretty empty at the end of the year, has suddenly gotten very crowded with a lot of bodies. You have guys from last year like David Bell who are still looking to find a place. You have Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones. You brought in Elijah Moore. You brought in some guys in free agency. So there are a number of guys vying for position here at wide receiver that weren't here last year. Anthony Schwartz is somewhere on the roster still, right? I think they have I think they have almost 10 wide receivers on the roster right now. So tons of guys there. But of those guys, I think, except for Isaiah Weston, who is 6'5", but we don't know if he's going to make the team this year. He's the biggest guy there, and he definitely plays the biggest out of all of the wide receivers. And that is something I have been complaining about this team for a very long time. So they go and get somebody that can get that with there, right? And again, my biggest complaint about the Browns offense was we have enough guys to move up the field from the 20s to the 20s, right? We can get to the red zone fairly often with the wide receivers we have, right? Donovan Peoples-Jones is good for a backside dig. Amari Cooper's good for a couple slants. Like, we know that we have the tools to get up and down the field, but where this team struggled the most, whether it was Deshaun Watson, whether it was Jacoby Brissett, was in the red zone, because at the end of the day, we didn't have anybody who could reliably be physical, big, and box out. We just didn't have it. David Njoku could be that every once in a while, but he wasn't consistent enough to do it. Then you look at the other wide receivers, and it's like Anthony Schwartz ain't going to be that. Like, no doubt in my mind that Anthony Schwartz isn't going to be that. Amari Cooper, he's never been that style of wide receiver. He's a good wide receiver, but not that style of wide receiver. Donovan Peoples-Jones is not necessarily like the most physical wide receiver at the point of attack. He will go out there and try to be long to make a play, but he's not going to be strong to make a play. And sometimes that's come in effect. And if you look at some of the downfalls for this team in those 6 games that Deshaun Watson was in there, a lot of dropped red zone touchdowns, right? That could have been caught if we were just a little bit more physical at the point of attack. So you get Cedric Tillman. He's the one guy in this class that is big and plays big. I think on the low end, he could be Devin Duvernay. On the high end, he could be, a poor man's, not Mike Wallace, but a poor man's Keenan Allen or something like that. Like a big physical wide receiver that's able to muscle his way in there, play a little bit of slot, and really kind of attack the field and be physical. So overall, I really don't hate that pick. I really don't. I think that's going to be the least controversial pick out of it. It's going to be interesting to see if they're interested in another wide receiver, because Tyler Scott is still there. Andre Iosivas will probably be there in the late 4th or 5th round. So they're going to have more options and more chances to take more wide receivers in this draft. I think they're full. They have a million wide receivers on this team. Like, let me read off the list of wide receivers that the Cleveland Browns have on this team. And it is a shocking amount of wide receivers that we still have on roster. So starting from top to bottom, Cedric Tillman, Jalen Darden, Elijah Moore, Marquise Goodwin, Marquez Stevenson, Isaiah Weston, Michael Woods, David Bell. That's what we up to 8. Jakeem Grant. I forgot he was on the roster. Amari Cooper. We're already at 10. I don't think we're halfway through. Demetric Felton is listed at wide receiver still. Donovan Peoples-Jones, Mike Harley, Dalen Baldwin, Anthony Schwartz. That's 15 wide receivers on the roster. 6 are probably going to make the team. Of those 6, we know that Elijah Moore is going to make the team. Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Cedric Tillman for sure. That's 4. The other 2, Marquise Goodwin probably. And then I don't know this 5th, the last one. So a lot of bodies there, but not a lot of promise. If you're looking at who the Browns could get later in this draft, that will also be interesting, right? On the offensive side, they only have 4 running backs in right now: Jerome Ford, Nate McCary, Nick Chubb. I would expect them to draft a running back at some point. I would also expect them to go at tight end at some point too here, right? They got Jordan Akins, Harrison Bryant, David Njoku, and Zaire Mitchell-Payton. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't try to, go after one of these guys like a Ricky Seals-Jones or something like that they had on the team before that could be that third tight end, just so they can get rid of Harrison Bryant. But maybe they're looking for somebody with more of a blocking focus. Darnell Washington was available for the bulk of this draft. He went to Pittsburgh. They weren't interested in him either. So we'll see that there. You look at center, guard, and tackle. You know, one of the interesting things is coming up for this offense that I also want to talk about is DeJuan Jones is there. And I get why a team didn't want to go DeJuan Jones in the first 3 rounds. But after round 4, man, DeJuan Jones is looking real appetizing, especially if you're a team like the Cleveland Browns, who you have some uncertainty at the tackle position and you want to get a little bit more athletic. Now, again, he's not a super athlete, especially at the weight that he's been reported to be at. He's going to have to lose some weight. But if you're the Cleveland Browns and you really believe in your offensive line coach and you feel like you have one of the best offensive line coaches in football, DeJuan Jones is a dude you should feel comfortable drafting, because if the problem is you don't feel like he has the right stuff personality-wise that you want, that's coachable, right? The only thing that's not coachable is an inability to play in the NFL. And DeJuan Jones, you know, some people are going to be rubbed the wrong way by him. Some people are going to be very intrigued by drafting him. But I think DeJuan Jones is somebody you seriously have to consider at this point, especially if you're the Cleveland Browns, where you feel like you have veteran offensive linemen. You're in a situation where he does not have to start year 1 and you can kind of redshirt him and get his mind right that way. And you feel like you have the infrastructure not only in the locker room with veterans, but also in the coaching staff when it comes to having one of the best offensive line coaches in football. You're the team. Like, not everybody is qualified to take a shot on DeJuan Jones. The Cleveland Browns are a bit uniquely qualified to take a shot on DeJuan Jones. There's nobody on the roster stopping him. As much as I like some of the young tackles that they have on this roster, none of them are stopping you from getting DeJuan Jones, because none of them are clear-cut future starters in the NFL. You want to have the best offensive line of football. This is how you maintain it. DeJuan Jones might be something you consider. You know, I'm going to just put that one out there. But that's my thoughts on the 74th pick. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.